Any questions about that? Okay. Then, yeah, that's the only item for this budget. So I was just going to move on to the governor's office if you want me to. All right, governor's office. The only item I'll talk to is 26.2.3. The other two items are statewide changes that are listed in every agency's budget. As you'll recall, when the governor issued his budget instructions to state agencies last summer, he asked everyone to submit a 2% reduction plan, both in the amended and in the 13 budget. What you see on the page, the 118.281 represents the 2% cut for the governor's office. The last item that I'll speak to is in the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. It's item 26.3.3. Again, this represents the 2% reduction being taken by OPB. And as you'll recall from Debbie's time with you last Friday, we're managing this through attrition, as well as we've let go one of our IT consultants. No, sir. That completes the items in the governor's office budget I'll talk to, and if there's no questions, we'll let you call up the agency heads of the attached agencies. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Tanya Boga, Director of the Office of the Child Advocate for the Protection of Children. We are one of the agencies attached to the Governor's Office with the responsibility of delivering a healthy and safe Georgia, in particular for the children of the state of Georgia. I have reviewed the Governor's recommendations and examined the agency's budget, and we are fully prepared to perform within those reductions. Specifically, when looking at 26.4.3, we were asked to replace state funds with federal funds. We've done that with the one federal grant that our office has from the CDC focusing on the reduction of SIDS deaths in the state of Georgia. The other action item was to reduce the regular operating expenses based on projected expenditures. We've also done that. We focused on reducing our IT costs was a primary area that we made the cuts from that. And that completes my report. Are there any questions? Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Charlie English. I'm Director of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, and I would call your attention to page 2 of 3, line 26.6.3. And other than that's the only thing other than the statewide impacts that we have to request, and our 2% budget reduction is requested that we reduce the contract that we pay to the Civil Air Patrol for aerial surveillance. That's a backup response to state aircraft, and it would have a minimal impact on us for disaster response. Thank you.
Oh my God, I knew that was going to come, but we're ready. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, committee members. Mr. Chairman Melvin Everson, Executive Director, Administrator, Governor's Office, Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity Employment. We have reviewed the budget submitted by the Governor's Office, and we were not able to honor the 2% reduction. We submitted it, but due to performance issues in the agency at the time of my arrival in September 2011, we suffered a major funding cut from the feds in regards to what we do, and that's why you see that one-time add there at 26.7.3 of $150,000 to add to our bottom line operating expense to get us over the hump until we can come from under the performance improvement plan, better known as the PIP, that we're currently under because of performance issues in the agency. 26.7.3, I'm sorry. Yes. And with the performance improvement plan, we have to put forth to the feds a training initiative and a strategy as far as how we plan to come out from under the PIP. And we have done that. They've signed off on it, and we anticipate coming from under the PIP within the next 35 to 40 days, at which time they will recertify and reactivate cases to the agency so we can once again generate revenue coming to the agency. Sure, no problem. And for those committee members, I did contact most of you. Representative Lynn James, I left a phone call for you, but I was not able to get in touch with you. And Mr. Chairman, likewise with you as well. The other committee members, they are aware of this one-time ad, and I touched bases with him in the last 2 days in regards to this. Yes, I did. Yeah. You're my fraternity brother. We'll take care of you. Thank you.
John Sowers apologized today. He's regaling the senior citizens of Savannah with the virtues of consumer protection at this moment, but he'll be back later this afternoon. Essentially, just if we can just go to program net, which is the 164,803, which is the governor's 2% reduction, which is the accumulation of the other three items. We're prepared to meet that, mainly through attrition in the agency and then not filling positions in terms of personal services. We're reducing our operating expenses by $50,000, which means we're going to try to do the same with less. And other than that, we're replacing some funds with some investigative fees and with our consumer education funds. But in terms of your main question that you ask is, how is it going to affect the agency? We're going to continue to do the job, as y'all see fit. We have the consumer education fund that is other funds money. It's not state funds money, it's other funds money. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Darren Hicks, and I'm the Inspector General in the Office of the State Inspector General. With me today is Bill Donaldson. He is a Deputy Inspector General in our office. refer you to section 26.11 of the tracking sheet. The governor and OPB has recommended maintaining our budget with the exception of the add-ons for state health benefit plan and telecommunication expenses at the same base level as we were in the original fiscal year 2012 budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. We had submitted a proposed 2% reduction. The governor's office came back with a recommendation of maintaining us at our current budget. Well, we run roughly 94% on fixed expenses already, personnel, GTA, and GBA. We have 6%, 5% of which is our just plain operating expenses. 1% is IT expenditure, and 1% is what we pay to other state agencies. There's really, I guess, charitable, is we're right up on the edge to begin with. Last year's percentage was, what was that last year's?
Lost a total of approximately $78,000 net last year.
It was a significant cut last year, and we've had to make adjustments through this year just to get us to where we are right now, operating within budget. I have.
I remember last year when we were sitting here, you had to have passed for the past 2 years, and now it was 70, like 12, 13% reduction last year. Maybe it's not 15.
I think it was close to 15%, yes, sir.
That's what I thought. Have you been able to maintain staff at the current levels, or we had attrition?
When I came into the office last January, there were 5 approved positions. One was a full-time administrative assistant, 3 deputies, and my position. We have gotten rid of the administrative assistant position and taken on those responsibilities internally. And then the full deputy position, when that became vacant this year, instead of refilling it with a full deputy, what we did is we created a new entry-level position of an investigator. And so we were able to slot that as an entry-level position, reduce the salary, and actually it's worked out better providing support for the deputies and what they do. So we've brought down to 4 staff members, but still much less than what we had before. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Tricia Pridemore, Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Workforce Development. I have Kate Russell with me here today. She's the Financial Director for our office and our Chief Financial Officer. If you would refer to cell number 26.10 on the tracking document, you'll see that the Governor's Office of Workforce Development receives no state appropriations at this time. All of our funding is federal. We started out with $5.19685 million for the last fiscal year, and through a movement of the WIA program from the Georgia Department of Labor, that is set to increase to a total of $361,918.
Any questions from members of the committee? Thank you and welcome.
Thank you for your time.
All right, Department of Revenue. Page 19, I believe, for members of the committee and the tracking document.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I think there are sort of 4 buckets of changes in the budget, in the amended budget. The first is cuts due to efficiencies at the department. The second is billings and funds to pay for GTA charges. The third is cuts in the budget based on revenue that's generated at the department under FIFAs, which are liens filed by the state. And then fourth is a proposed fraud program that the department has commenced or is just commenced in hopes to run this tax season. I want to just walk, I guess, through the tracking sheet. On 41.1.2, this line item, it flows through every one, but it's all related to GTA charges that the department receives. As you can imagine, the department is a huge consumer of technology. In effect, we're a big data processor. And in the original budget for 2012, we were allocated about $25 million of state funds, and GTA estimated that we would be billed about $27 million, a gap of about $2 million that we felt like we could manage and use other funds to pay for charges. As we stand here today, the estimated charges from GTA look like 28 to 20, almost $29 million. The governor's original recommendation was to cut the GTA or cut funds from the state to pay for GTA bills by $3.7 million, leaving a gap of about $7.5 million. I think in conversations with OPB, everybody has recognized that's an issue that needs to be looked at. For at least the $3.7 million of the proposed cuts, though it still leaves a gap, a pretty significant gap between funds from the state and the charges to GTA, which over time, one of 3 things has to happen. Either we have to be able to figure out how to lower our GTA charges, which is probably a longer conversation than we want to have today.
How would you do that?
Well, in theory, we ought to be saving and realizing some efficiencies through our operations as we've converted over systems. I think the reality is, to date, we have not been able to achieve those savings. And I don't know that anybody can give you a very good answer as to why that is.
Let me, before we continue, is there any way to pass those on down to the local governments?
No. These are all well, I suppose you could pass a law that would allow us to do that, but sure. No, these are all internal operating expenses to process tax returns, process information that we receive related to state taxes.
So the technology wouldn't have any effect on any of the printers or anything like that that we mandate to the local?
So that's
under the big umbrella of technology. I don't know if that's the same fit or not.
It is certainly under the big umbrella of technology, but a different bucket, I think, is how I look at it. And certainly, I know there's some folks here who want to talk to you about that. I think it's an appropriate conversation, but not part of this bucket.
Okay, thank you.
So GTA is certainly an issue. Either we got to figure out how to lower the bills, more money has to be allocated to us, or we need to cannibalize that money from somewhere else and in effect shut down other operations. That line item runs through every one of our functions, obviously. 41.1.3 it relates to the fraud prevention program that we have started to run at the department. There's several line items in here, but in aggregate, the internal costs of the department are about $750,000. The potential payments to vendors who are helping us with the system are budgeted at $4.9 million. Those payments will only be made if the state blocks fraudulent returns of at least $60 million. So there's a variable component to this. The state doesn't pay for the program unless the state gets results. And so far, we're 1 week into it. The results are consistent with our planning and our modeling, but we still obviously have a long way to go. Under 41.2, Department of Administration, I think the only thing of note is 0.2.3, which is a reduction. For the tax credit that folks get. This number gets us through calendar year 2010. But this will be a continuing obligation of the state and probably will grow over time. 41.4 is the fraud prevention system. That's the amount. The 4.9 million is what could be paid to outside vendors to help us with the system. And I'm happy to give you more details about the system if y'all are interested.
But again, that isn't paid unless they meet. An expectation
there.
Your efficiency, the problems last year administratively that you walked into.
Oh, well,
You had to deal with-
yeah, I think last year at this time we had a TV camera in here because we had managed to screw up 33,000 tax returns.
I just think the update is promising, if you'll give that.
Yeah, I think that's we certainly resolved that issue, and you know, I think we have put in place, in large part because of the large appropriations that the prior administration and the legislature put in place to improve the technology at the department. I think that's the right path. We should continue on as we go forward. So I think we've been able to. We certainly cleaned up that mess, and so far, knock on wood, we haven't created one comparable to that so far. And that is certainly our goal.
And then the final, Mr. Chair, for me, is the I hear from our county and local governments on the timeliness of the tax they're due back to them once revenue collects it.
Yeah.
Is that being improved?
I think we've made progress on it. The way the system works now is for sales tax, which is really what we're talking about. Merchants collect during a month. So in January, they'll collect all of January. By February 20th, they will remit the tax to the state, and we remit it then on to the counties that same month in February. For a while, there were issues about sort of unclassified or money that we couldn't tell what county it belonged to. Over this year, and I think even before this year, to be fair, over this year we have squeezed down that money. So now the unknown money that has to be allocated out has been squeezed to a very, very small number. We are moving things through the system, I think, as efficiently as we can right now. There's still some discussion in requests from local governments about more information related to where that money is generated within a particular county. But that's a much longer conversation, but happy to have it at any point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. Are you requiring electronic filing on taxes? Are you accepting anything manually?
We still take some this on income taxes and some sales tax. We do take some on income. I think last tax year we got about 3/4 of the returns were filed electronically, which means still about 1/4 were filed manually. On sales tax, now anybody who has to pay or remit to the state more than $500 a month or a month, I think, has to file electronically. So that number has been squeezed down considerably. Though there's still some paper that moves through the system. We continue to look for ways to get paper out of the system.
I've had a constituents and business owner got fined a penalty for doing it. I don't know why they kicked it back for whatever reason, but he was penalized for doing it manually. I don't know where he did or force him to go electronically, which he didn't have that capability.
Yeah, there is a penalty for not filing when you're supposed to file electronically. For folks who can prove that is a hardship, we'll waive it for those folks. Our interest isn't to generate a bunch of penalties for the state. It's to get people to move to electronic commerce. And sometimes it takes a carrot, and sometimes it takes a little bit of a stick.
The other question is, and I expressed this to you before, would it not be wouldn't it simplify things to let the counties collect sales tax and take out their portion and send it to the revenue to save you having to write a check and go back and, like you found some that didn't know where it went, that this would be a better accountability, and plus being simple, that they get their share and then send what they owe you?
I think it completely depends on who you ask. If you ask counties and cities, they might take that position. If you ask merchants, especially any merchant that operates in more than one county, I think you would get a much different answer. The policy of the state has been to collect it at the state level. Whether that's a good idea or bad idea, I don't know that it's really my decision. Under the current system, we'll try to operate it as efficiently as we can. You could clearly set up a different system, like Alabama has that system. My understanding is there are people who think it's great, and there are people who do not.
Yeah, cities and counties would love it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. And then, of course, if an error happens at the local level, they would just simply say it was state mandated. Not that we've ever done that, right, Mr. Gale?
You've been in politics before.
Mr. Allison, Representative Allison.
Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. I just want to take a moment. I'm not trying to rehash what Chairman Smith said, but I did want to say I saw your presentation where you showed dramatically how the call times went down. I wanted to applaud your office for that. I know you were thrown in the deep end of the pool last year with that press thing. I also want to just make a comment. Your office has been much more attentive than your predecessor to me and my constituents, and for that I just want to say thank you, and thank you for all your hard work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We're certainly trying to work on customer service, and I appreciate the feedback, and both good and bad. Thank you.
Representative James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of those simple questions. You have positioned yourself where if the funding is not right, we get the blame on what you do. And my thing is, if you're heart of hearts as a commissioner, are you adequately funded to do what you're supposed to do, your job in an efficient way?
I mean, I think that's a fair question. I think if we can fix the GTA issues, then we're in a position to continue to do the work that we've been doing and continue to generate comparable levels of revenue for the state. And over time, continue to find efficiencies at the department, which would allow us to lower costs. But without fixing that, I don't think you should expect to see any dramatic changes in the department's operations.
But you will make sure that your request is going to be what you think it should be in order for you to do the job that you should do.
Absolutely. And we've had very direct and frank conversations with OPB about the numbers. And I think some of our budget folks have done the same with y'all. So yes.
Thank you.
Any other members of the committee? Any other questions? I've got a couple. I was just looking. Replace due to attrition 41.2. Hold to agent positions vacant 41.5.4. I'm sure I'm missing some 41.8.4. Reduce funds for personnel attrition. Personnel attrition 41.94. I haven't added all those up. Do you know how much that is? I missed 41.10 and some others.
Not off the top of my head, but we can get you the number.
It's not, I mean, we can go back to the office and kind of do that. I do wonder.
I think the total cuts put aside the fraud were in the 2.1 to $2.2 million range, I believe. So overall, I'm not sure which of those numbers you pulled out, but overall, if you added up all the cuts, I think it's in that range.
Yeah, I was just looking at the total attrition, and I got to tell you, people don't want to stand in line to get their driver's license, and boy, they complain about Department of Revenue. And how do you make the decision on any of these personnel cuts, right, and how they affect the public's ability for you to respond in a timely manner?
That's a very good question, and on the way up, as you've appropriate more money to the department, we try to maximize the results of that, and obviously on the way down, we try to minimize the impact. We have a management team at the department that we sit and meet every 2 weeks. In this, around this issue, we will meet. We'll put every idea on the table, and then collectively make a decision on what we think generates the least impact, and hopefully we can spread it across different places. So it's a judgment call, based on how we think we can best take costs out of the system. Constantly keep an eye on our customer service measurements, on how quickly we're processing and refunding folks. So it's a lot of small decisions.
How many employees do you have?
We're right at 1,300, give or take.
So as commissioner, it's impossible for you to know that Bill Smith is set to retire.
I would have a level of omniscience that yeah.
And so when that department head of that department has to retire, and you told him you want a 5%, how do you actually get to bore down and know what that person does? Because you got bigger
right, fish
to fry and things of this nature. I mean, how do you oversee?
I think it's like running any enterprise. You have to have the right people in the right places that you trust, and through a series of conversations with those people, you help them make judgment calls and decisions. They will not all be perfect, but you got to run it like you'd run any other business.
How do you know if they're not perfect? Just a series of complaints coming from that one certain area that makes you know all of a sudden, and they're getting to the commissioner to be able to let them know that?
Or the metrics we have in place. So call times start to rise, or abandonment rates start to rise, or our processing slows down, or any of the other number of metrics that we look at start to get out of whack.
Stick around for me if you would. We had somebody that wanted to talk in regards to what's going on at the local level. Who was that? Representative Royal? Former Representative Royal? Come on up. So, Commissioner, my trustee Jeremy here told me that's about 17% of your total budget cut came from attrition. I don't know how that compares. We'll be able to, just. Mr. Royal, good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the courtesy of being able to appear before you. I represent GATO, which is the Georgia Association of Taxing Officials, which is the tax commissioners across the state of Georgia. And these tax commissioners, through the gratis program, have collected over, at the last reporting, $298 million on state motor vehicle fees and taxes. We've got a great concern in that later on in 2009, the department provided information that they would not provide support or any operating assistance for the gratis system. We have grave concerns in that if we don't have this support, we're not going to be able to administer the gratis system as it should be. The state or the Department of Revenue has always owned the printers especially and provided the support. And I understand the serious economic times which has resulted in them having to make this type of decision. We're just simply expressing a concern. We want to provide service. We don't want the long lines in fees, paying the fees and titles and the decals. We don't have the continuity and the technical knowledge to replace these printers, to know the parts. This has always been provided by the Department of Revenue, and we appreciated their interaction here. We're just saying that we would like to get some funding or respectfully request funding, and their testimony before the joint House and Senate Appropriations Committees, they estimated it would take $1.5 million to $2 million to fund this issue, and we respectfully request that you consider that. We have tax commissioners from some of the largest counties in the state behind me, and if there's any specific request or a question that you have, we'd be most happy for them to respond to that.
Well, let me just wrap my head around it a little bit. Would that $1.5 to $2 million replace every printer in the state?
No, sir.
So
it would continue the program that we have now in replacement parts and support.
Mm-hmm. So that would be an allocation that would have to be done yearly.
Probably so, yes.
Okay.
Sir.
At the current, or how they used to do it, the county would just call the Department of Revenue and say, we need a new printer, and this is the type we have. And someone sitting in a small county may not have a Staples or may not have a this, or each printer's different, I guess.
These printers were uniform printers, and that's another part of the problem. If we have to, each county, 159 counties, go out and buy additional printers, they don't know how to talk to one another. The state is the broker in this information, and we have a problem with technical expertise, plus the maintenance contracts were, statewide. Now there would be 159 individual maintenance contracts. I just think it would be more cost effective for the Department of Revenue to still head up this function.
Any questions? Chairwoman Smith.
Thank you, George, serving with you all those years, and certainly appreciate y'all's problem. I'm curious in that you're state and local partnerships, are there other avenues that you've explored? For example, the state might continue to provide, purchase, and oversee, but there would be a fee that each county could pay towards the maintenance of that. I'm wondering the different options that
Can
we
you
could
split
look
the
at.
baby in any way?
Yeah, different
Yeah.
options available to us.
I think there would be different options. Timing has become a concern because this happened later on in 2011, and we have. You can understand the magnitude of this problem when you have 159 counties trying to decide what they want to do.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that there is a way that apparently what I'm gathering from all of this is that it does need to be state maintained and directed. But the state has cut because of its cost. Therefore, is there a way to have our local governments partner in the cost but maintain the state overview?
This is
what
Mr.
I'm looking for.
This is Tedders. He's the tax commissioner of Bibb County.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll try to see if I can answer this for you. There are the equipment was set up about 12 years ago to get all of the counties in Georgia to have one uniform motor vehicle registration system. And in doing so, they provided the equipment, all of the support to get all of the counties to do it because a lot of your smaller counties just couldn't fund it. So that's what we did. And the situation we've got now is that these printers, it's mainly the printers, are starting to wear out. There was never a maintenance plan in place. These printers are starting to wear out. The motor vehicle department was good about providing to us what they could, but as their budget has decreased and their funding has decreased, that level of service has decreased. So now we've got printers that have completely failed in a lot of the counties. And this causes, of course, a problem for the taxpayers who are coming in. And they're having to wait, and we're having to tell them this is what was happening. Now, to answer your question, I've looked into, we met with the commissioner. He was very nice to meet with us and explained the situation to us and says, you know, hey, we're here to help you however we can, but as far as going forward, this is going to be your responsibility. So I immediately went back to Macon, immediately got on the phone, and I have started looking at how to fix it for myself, but also for my other 158 colleagues. We can individually do service agreements. My county could afford it. Douglas County, Todd Cowan here, he could probably afford it. Sylvia here in Spalding County, she might be able to afford it. But some of our smaller counties, they just could not. And they will not be able to afford it. The printers, we would have to budget to purchase individually. This is about a $600 printer. The printer then has to be configured to work with the state's proprietary system. Okay. I have purchased part of mine in Bibb. Some of the other counties have purchased part of theirs just simply because we had to continue to move forward and we had to continue to assist our taxpayers. So now what we've got is this is being put onto us at a local level as to how to fix this. And our thing is that the requirement of registering a vehicle for titling it and for registering a vehicle is a state requirement, not a county requirement. The payment of the ad valorem tax is a county requirement, but we could actually handle that on something separate if we had to, and would not be required to purchase these special printers. It takes a printer that will heat at a certain point in order for that ink to stick to that decal. So that's kind of where we're stuck. To answer, I don't know that the counties would be willing to put up any part of the money, or if they even could put up any part of the money. I just don't know.
I just want to make sure I heard what you said, though. 12 years ago, the counties were going to do everything to get on the same page?
Yes, sir. We implemented this program in 1999.
Yeah. And we got different kind of printers all over the place now?
No, sir. It's all one printer.
Okay.
That it requires everything's been replaced at least once, and so it requires one printer only in order to work with the state's proprietary system.
Okay. Representative Pruitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I came in late. Now, I apologize, and you may have already discussed all this, but I am very familiar with the printer situation in my counties where I am, and it's a big issue. And I believe the number I was quoted in doing some research, it was 1,500 printers, and you needed about 1.5 million to do the printers and the maintenance contracts.
Yes, sir. When our association, the tax commissioners, met with the Department of Revenue, we were told that there are about 1,500 printers in the county tax offices owned by the state. Some of the tax offices have already gone out and purchased their own. And yes, sir, the commissioner to us that it would take approximately $1.5 to $2 million in order to replace the ones that need replacing or maintain what needs to be maintained.
Now, I understood that would put new printers in place and maintenance fees.
Yes,
is
sir.
what I was quoted. And the thing that I'm concerned about is before you've been able to have some printers available, but now you don't have any reconditioned printers at all, and printers down.
That's what we understand.
Basically,
yes,
they're put in a situation they've got to buy a printer, even though they may not can afford it. And keep in mind that some locations have multiple printers.
Yes, sir. In Bibb, I have approximately 30, I would say. So, and I'm a medium-sized county. You take some of the larger counties, I just don't know how many they have.
Well, I was trying to make a point. Pretty big expense.
Yes, sir. It would be a very large expense.
It's not just one printer per county.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, Representative Pruitt. 2,159 counties, $12,000 per county. No, but I'm just by county, and 1,500 printers.
If you average it out, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
1,500 printers by 2 million would be $1,200. Is that right? 1,200. 1,330. I really appreciate you putting this on our radar screen, Commissioner. Let's talk about this a little bit. Thank y'all.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you. I think I heard the end of 2011 or something when we changed that. Is that right? When did we just?
You know, I don't have the exact dates, but at some point in the last 2 or 3 years, effectively that line item was zeroed out in the department's budget, and then we ran through whatever inventory we had, and then I think at some point in the past year we figured out we needed to sit down with the counties and let them know what the situation was.
What's your recommendation?
I think there's two issues at play. One is who bears the cost, and then two, efficiencies of operation looking at the state as a whole. I think, obviously wasn't here, but I think the reason that the program was originally put in place and the state started funding it was because every county had a different set of printers, and there were different issues, and there were consistency issues and operational issues. And at some point it got so bad, the state stepped in and said, we got to fix this. With the budget cuts, I'm not surprised that, you know, they looked everywhere. This is one of the places that eventually got zeroed. I don't know if it was the department or y'all. It doesn't really matter. And if you had $1.5 million laying around, sure, it's a good idea. But that competes with
we
other.
We might be able to find it.
I'm sure there's lots of places you could find it. There's probably lots of people here left that I'm sure would love to find it for you. I think all things equal, you know, it'd be a good idea to continue, but it's real money, right? It has to come from somewhere, and is it the next best use of $1.5 million? I don't know. You know, I think ultimately we got to keep some consistency in the system, so we can either impose that cost on all the counties and tell them, listen, this is the spec you have to use, and you got to find it in your budgets, or we need to do that and give them the money to do it. You know, from an operational perspective, it's probably easier if we give them the money